All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to my monthly YouTube live. Let me go ahead and check the settings, make sure I'm coming in loud and clear. Hopefully, you guys can hear me okay. If you're watching for the first time, welcome. And if you're coming back for more, I appreciate you all coming back. I see a couple familiar names in here: Gromito, Ken, Steven. Steven says he just arrived home. Well, welcome, everyone. Definitely let me know where you guys are tuning in from. I like to do these monthly YouTube lives, I guess every single month. That's what monthly means, right? And we'll go over some of the top news stories, some of the latest app updates, since, there's a lot going on in California right now with the Uber driver app. And I know a lot of you probably have questions and how that all might work and really how it affects everyone else. So lots to talk about there. Gramito says, we can see and hear you. So that's great. So if you guys are watching live, you can actually participate in the live chat. It should be over, I think, on the right-hand side, or if you're on mobile, it should be down below. If you're watching later or after the fact, you should be able to watch the live chat as we go. You won't be able to participate, but you can leave a comment and I will respond as soon as I can. So today, definitely, a lot to talk about. I'll sort of start opening it up to you guys and see what you want to chat about, what questions you might have. So looks like we got James coming in from St. Louis. William says, I like the shirt. Yeah, so we actually do have a new logo, and I am happy to say that we just launched a brand new site. I guess you would call it a site redesign. So I'll leave a link. I guess you guys probably know the website, therideshareguy.com. Maybe you only watch the YouTube videos though. So if you come to YouTube, you won't see the site redesign, but the actual site we did redesign, and it is nice because we have a cool section for all the videos, and we're definitely gathering a lot of feedback there. It's funny, I haven't updated the site and basically since I started the whole blog 5 or 6 years ago. So I think the site was pretty ugly, pretty ghetto before, just because it was so old. But I think now it's a lot cleaner and just, it's a lot easier to navigate and kind of highlights the most important information a lot easier. So definitely let me know what you guys think about that. Looks like we've got Janine tuning in from Ventura. Gramito says, I'm shopping for a dash cam. So good question to start. I'm curious to know, first of all, how many of you guys and girls are using a dash cam? And if so, which brand are you using? If you've been following my channel from the beginning, 5 years ago, I started off with the Falcon 360, and that camera got a little bit outdated, right? Because it's 5 or 6 years old. And I recently, well, I guess not recently, but a year or two ago, I switched to the Vantrue N2 Pro. And so that's the camera that I use right now in my car. And I liked it so much, I bought one for my wife's car. So definitely curious to know what cameras you guys are out there. There's a couple we've reviewed recently, the Blue Sea Sky dash cam that I kind of like. I still haven't found a camera that's absolutely perfect at like kind of the perfect price point, but I kind of really think that a dash cam is great for not only recording what's going on outside your car, right? If you get into an accident and you need the footage for insurance to show the other stupid driver was at fault, but also inside. There's a little small flashing blue light on mine. And I just noticed that whenever passengers are in my back seat, they always tend to behave a lot better when they kind of know they're on camera. If they're so drunk they can't even notice the camera, then that's another story. But I like it as a preventative measure. To me, it's like a cheap insurance policy, right? You don't drive around your car without insurance, so you might as well get a dash cam. It's like kind of an additional cheap insurance policy. So love to know what you guys say. Looks like Janine the Queen, the Rideshare Queen, says, I have the Vantrue N2 Pro. I love it. Gramino, he says shopping for dash cam, Vantrue. Wow, a lot of Vantrues. I wonder if it might be because that's the camera that we recommend that you guys all listen to our advice. So I think good thing we recommended a good cam because it looks like everyone is enjoying it. So if you guys want to purchase the Vantrue N2 Pro, I'll go ahead and leave a link to that. Right now, we've got an Amazon affiliate link for the Vantrue N2 Pro. And by the way, it is kind of a cool program. We don't make a ton of money off of our Amazon links. But the nice thing is that if you buy anything from Amazon, I think within 24 hours of clicking our link, it could be a dash cam, it could be diapers for your baby, whatever, we get a very small percentage. So I know there are a few of you out there who, whenever they're doing Amazon shopping, they use our link first. I think it's the rideshareguy.com/Amazon, or if you just see any Amazon link on the YouTube channel or the site, it's usually our affiliate link. So that's a good way to support the site. Dennis says, any dash cam is a good deal. Pop-Up Smurf says, terrible. Lyft won't even care to see the dash cam evidence. So that is a good point. The dash cam footage, I don't know that I've ever heard of Uber. Let's say something happens, your passenger accuses you of saying something, which is kind of important. You want to make sure you keep the footage, but more sometimes for legal purposes, right? If a passenger, accuses, I don't know, let's say something serious like sexual assault, you probably want to have that footage, at least a few days worth of footage. It's like a few days, especially if you're driving 8 hours a day, for example. You want to have a few days of footage saved up on your camera. So you need to have a big enough SD card. But so that's for legal reasons. But if you can't really take it to Uber and Lyft, which kind of sucks, so you're sort of a little bit on your own. And I know some drivers have had some issues with that. There was an interesting story that we wrote about over on the blog. I'm going to share a link to it right now, but it's about a new program that Uber has, a partnership with a company called NATO, N-A-U-T-O Dashcam. And basically what it is, it's in a few cities. They started it back in July, and I think it's in Dallas, Houston, Memphis, a few cities in Florida. And basically what they're doing is they're kind of offering drivers a dash cam anywhere from $5 to $10 a month, but Uber does have access to it if there's an incident only. They can't just go and look at your footage, at least that's what they say, but they do have access to it. I don't know. Personally, I think it's a little pricey. You might as well just buy one on your own, but that's an interesting program. Gramito says, I had a pedestrian fake my hitting him. Fortunately, the casino caught it on their camera. So that sounds good. Nick, what's going on, Nick? He says, been lucky and had good riders so far in my city. How's it going? Things are good over here. Looks like we've got a decent amount of people tuning in right now. We're up to 50 watching live. So if you guys haven't given this video a thumbs up, definitely go ahead and do that now. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe, because I do go live every single month. And then whenever there's big breaking news, so that way you'll get a notification when I do go live, probably like what happened today and how and why you're here today. So Jeff says, can we declare Tryp officially dead? Good question, Jeff. I'm about to talk a lot, so I got to take a sip of water. But, I never take pleasure in companies, sort of, dying or people getting fired or kind of just like in general bad things happening. And, I saw a ton of red flags with Tryp from day one. We didn't actually even make a video about them because I didn't want to get people's hopes up. We did write an article that sort of like I wouldn't say bash them, but really just told it like it is and kind of highlighted like all the issues that they had. Like they didn't have any fundraising. They had this weird, the weird founders had this weird past and all that. And, like kind of shady past, you could even say. But I love the idea, like anyone who's coming out and starting a company that's going to be positive for drivers and help them or reduce commissions or, just put pressure on Uber and Lyft, I think is a good thing. And so I didn't want to like come out and completely bash them. But like if I was betting, I would have bet a lot of money that they weren't going to make it. And, not to say that they haven't made it, but I think that, they aren't around, right? I don't think they've hit any of the deadlines they said. And, you can kind of see that, there was a reason basically why I didn't do any videos on them. And we only wrote one article about them, was because I wanted to see like some real traction. I never actually saw what's called a PUC license, which is a Public Utilities Commission license. And so that's the actual license you need to operate a rideshare company in California or in Florida. And you need that in every state that you operate. And in order to get that, you need commercial insurance, which is very expensive. You need all your drivers fingerprinted and background checked. And I never saw that from Tryp. And that's literally like the first step you need to actually go out and give a real ride. If they would have gotten that, I would have actually like maybe paid attention to them. So that's just something that I look for. So Jeff, I think we can officially declare them dead. And, not that I take pleasure in it, but that's just the reality of it. Jonathan says, if Uber has access to the dash cam, it's a no-go, super shady. Personally, I agree. I think actually Uber was pretty clear that they did not have access to the footage unless, an incident was reported, and they kind of really wanted to highlight that. But, I think that they've said stuff like that in the past, so I would be a little bit careful there. And, it's not like a big deal. Like, you can get a cheap dash cam for probably 40, $50 on Amazon. I recommend getting a much better one, but you can get a cheap one for 40 or $50. So that's how I would handle that there. And let's see, any other good questions come in here? So hopefully, Jeff, that answered your question. Sergio says, I'm here until soccer practice, Harry. I love the website redesign. So Sergio is one of our contributors over on the blog. Thanks for joining, Sergio. Dennis says, anybody from Long Beach, California? Well, I used to live in Long Beach, but now I'm over here in mid-city LA. Seems like we've got a bunch of people tuning in from all over, though, so appreciate everyone tuning in for this. And let's see what other questions we have coming in. So, Real Rideshare Stories, what do you think about the audio recording that they're testing in markets? Some same thoughts on is dashcam, the Uber versus just getting your own. I like the idea if they take that audio. I mean, it's sort of tough, Real Rideshare, because like I said, right now, if you have your own dashcam footage and you get falsely accused of something, you can't take it to Uber and Lyft. Like, they're not going to go, and I've never heard of a driver, taking that footage to Uber and Lyft and they like sit down and watch it with you, even though they really should, right, to sort of prove your innocence. But it seems like, if you did go the route where you allowed them to have access to the footage or access to the audio, it could kind of save you in the case where you're falsely accused of something. So I think you have to kind of balance the potential privacy issue. So if you're someone who really cares about your privacy, you might want to say no to this program. But if you're 100% reliant on your Uber or Lyft income, like passengers say shit all the time, right? And like you really, so what I would say is if you're really reliant on your Uber or Lyft income, you really want everything in your back pocket to help you just in case things go wrong. You want your own, or you want a dash cam. Like I said, it's a cheap insurance policy. You want audio recording happening. And if Uber can access that audio recording, I would say that's probably a good thing for you just in case a passenger says something. There was sort of another YouTuber, Rideshare Revolution, who's done a few videos on this, and he's got a great channel. I recommend you go check it out, especially if you're in Chicago. But he was deactivated by Uber over what he says was a false allegation from a passenger, right? And I don't think he had a dash cam, but even if he did, what's he going to do with it? He can't take it to Uber, and he can't, sort of prove his innocence. But I would hope that, if Uber was recording audio on that ride, they would be able to pull up the audio in question. And if he did indeed say something, then he should be deactivated. And if he didn't, he would sort of be proven innocent. So, I mean, it is a little scary with Uber and other companies, start tapping into our privacy. But I mean, like I've got an Alexa right over here and it could be listening to this YouTube live right now. But I'm not saying anything too important. So for me, it's kind of like an okay trade-off. So hopefully that makes sense. Jonathan says, you could certainly bring the dash cam footage into a hub. Yeah, you could definitely bring it into a hub. I just don't know if they would actually watch it or let you use it to prove your innocence, if that makes sense. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just haven't seen or I haven't heard of a driver telling me that it happened, basically, or that they were able to do it successfully. So, Sergio says, can you please clarify all the clickbait media articles regarding California drivers setting their own fares? Drivers don't set the rates. Uber has set the LA rates at 60 cents per minute and 21 cents per mile. So, yeah, you guys have probably been following all of our videos and updates on all of the changes in California. So just a quick recap. In December, Uber started giving drivers in California the ability to see passengers' destination. And then I think in January, they got rid of upfront pricing. And so now what the rider pays is tied to what the driver gets. They also brought back the fixed service fee. So now they charge like a $2 to $3 booking fee, I think it's called. And then they take their 25% service fee. They made some small changes to Quest. It's big changes to Quest, but we can get into that later. And then most recently, at 3 airports in California, I think it was Palm Springs, Santa Barbara, Sacramento, pretty small airports. They gave drivers the ability to set a fare multiplier. So you're not really allowed to set your own rates. Uber is still setting the rates, but you now have the ability to set a fare multiplier. So if you want to charge 10% more or 2x more or 3x more, you can do that at those airports where drivers, have pushed back a lot, I would say. I think that concept is great for drivers, but where drivers have pushed back a lot is that one of the other things they did was they're letting drivers, if it's surging, you can actually go below Uber surge. So let's say it's normal 2x surge now, they've got this, they're back to the multiplier surge in these areas, and you're not getting a ride even though it's 2x surge, or you just want to make sure you get a ride faster. You can actually kind of like undercut the driver next to you and go to a 1.9, and the Uber algorithm is going to match you with the first passenger, basically, right? They're matching passengers now with drivers, whatever driver has the lowest price. So that's sort of what's going down in California. Definitely curious to know. Hopefully that clarifies it for you, Sergio. I know that there's a lot of changes that have happened lately, and it is a bit confusing. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Dennis says there's no Quest bonus in California anymore. No more $2 to $3 per ride. So what happened with Quest is basically they changed it to from a per trip bonus, right? Where if you did 50 trips, you would get X dollar bonus, $100, 150, whatever it is, it's always different. And now you get a reduced service fee, right? So instead of that 25% service fee, you get 15% service fee. But, and Uber, of course, said that drivers were going to make the same amount of money with the new program versus the old program. Like, how many times have we heard that, right? And I guess what I feel like Uber still hasn't learned their lesson, because like when you mess with drivers' pay and it's going to be the same, like it obviously isn't benefiting me as a driver. So it can only be benefiting Uber, right? And it's like they still keep coming out with this messaging like, don't worry, it's going to be the same. If it's the same, why are you messing with it, right? So hopefully, well, I mean, even if someone from Uber is watching this right now, I doubt that they'll actually fix that for the next time they come out with a product release, because they don't really seem to learn their lesson. I brought that up like 10 times by now, but that's sort of what's going down with Quest there. Ken, so yeah, I am curious to know what you guys think about some of these changes in California. Do you have any questions? Do you want me to clarify anything? I know it is a bit confusing, but we've been testing a lot of this stuff out, and we'll have more articles and more videos in the future. If you're not in California, the reason why I think this is so important, and earlier I asked where you guys are driving, and I saw people from all over the country, and so you might be thinking to yourself like, who cares what's going on in California, right? But you can imagine in the future, I don't think Uber is going to want to have 2 completely different systems, right? Like one for California or one for 2 to 3 states, and then another system for 45 states or 47 states. I think they want the same pricing, or the same, maybe not the same rates, but the same marketplace dynamics, right? Like the same type of surge pricing, either multiplier or flat rate surge, right? I don't think they want like this mishmash of policies and products and things like that across the country, because it makes it really confusing for them and for drivers and, just for everyone. So that's why I think what Uber is trying to do right now is figure out if this system will work, if it'll help them, if it'll like basically allow them to not classify drivers as employees in California because of AB5. That's why they're making all these changes. And then if it works, they're going to roll it out to the rest of the country. I think it's pretty obvious that they'll actually do that. So if you guys are kind of watching what's going down and not in California, you should definitely see how this stuff works. So when it does come to you, you can really take advantage of it, because that's one thing I'm seeing is that if you kind of know what you're doing, like strategy is becoming more important than ever with some of these changes. There's times where you might ignore lots of requests in a row, which I know Sergio loves to do. So Sergio calls it driver Hunger Games. Jonathan says trading Quest for service fee discount is very tricky. Drivers make less. And yeah, this is the thing. Like sometimes I wouldn't say I feel for Uber, but like I think that they just like don't think these things through, right? Like they changed the Uber Quest, which is really important to a lot of drivers because those bonuses are things people rely on. And, I'm sure they had a feeling that drivers wouldn't love it, but like there's so many ways that they could have done a better job of transitioning to the new system, like highlighting, like, hey, here's how much you would have made on the old system. Here's how much you made on the new system. Are those two numbers the same? If not, we're going to pay you the difference, right? Like if they're saying drivers are going to make the same, they kind of have to put their money where their mouth is. So, Creekside Rock Studio Band, I like that name, says, do you have any ideas if Lyft will start making the same changes as Uber as far as seeing the destination address of the rider before accepting? My name's David. So basically, Uber has been making all these changes in California, but meanwhile, Lyft hasn't, right? They're not doing anything. They're sort of sitting there, pat, and just chilling. And I don't really understand why. I think if I had to take a guess, I think what Lyft is doing is they're saying, okay, our A plan is, Uber and Lyft both don't want to classify drivers as employees. So Lyft is saying, okay, our A plan is this ballot initiative. So they're trying to put a ballot initiative. They're gathering signatures right now. Both Uber and Lyft are, and they're going to try to put a ballot initiative on the ballot in November for the presidential election. So it'll be a big turnout. And that is going to be kind of their A plan. Like, hey, hopefully we can, kind of like pass this ballot initiative and then we won't have to classify drivers as employees. Uber, that's maybe their A plan too. But Uber is like, hey, this is pretty important to us. So our backup plan, our B plan is going to try and actually treat drivers like independent contractors and see if we can, kind of like avoid regulation that way. So, I think that I'm surprised that Lyft hasn't followed in Uber's footsteps because they're sort of copycats. They usually do like exactly what Uber's doing. And I don't think they're all that creative most of the time with products and features and releases like this. Frankly, both companies copy each other a lot, but I think Lyft tends to be more of a copycat of Uber. And, but I do think like, if drivers really start taking advantage of, if all these features are much better for drivers, like seeing destination, like, I don't know why you would ever drive for Lyft right now, unless there was, some other like bonuses or some other, or if it was slow, right? I guess there's still some reason to drive for Lyft, but like really Uber, it just kind of like strengthens the case to only drive for Uber, especially in California. So hopefully that answers this question. Dennis says, dude, this weekend I had a 3% service fee. I make even less. This is not working. Steven says, many rides are just not worth it. I guess, now that you start to see where passengers are going, if they're only going like 5 minutes away, it's probably not even worth it for you to take that ride in the first place, especially if, those short trips no longer count towards your Quest bonus, right? So I think that's pretty interesting. I'm not really sure how, I'm sure Uber is tracking it all very closely and looking at it, but I don't know if it's going to work. Hey, what's up, Lisa? Thanks for joining. Sergio says Lyft is gambling with the whole market cap of a public company, and I kind of agree. I'm surprised that Lyft hasn't at least explored, like they're not even testing or piloting any of these changes. So even if they wanted to change things, I think it would be, months before they could actually get any of these out into the wild. And I'm really curious. I have a feeling that this is going to hurt Lyft a lot more than they realize. So I think that they're probably going to eventually, to long way of answering your question, I think they're going to eventually start making the same changes as Uber, but maybe too little, too late. We'll see. All right, good questions coming in. Janine says, how long will the Santa Barbara airport allow us to change the price? I think that they're probably going to allow it indefinitely. I think they're testing and piloting a lot, and I don't think it's going terribly wrong. So I think that they'll probably keep doing it, and if anything, give you more control over setting the price. Janine says, I decline all $3 to $5 rides. Not worth my time. I agree. I will tell you guys a funny story. I had a lunch meeting today, and it's like $10 to park at this place right by my house. And so I just took an Uber over there because it was only $5 or $6. I think it was $6 to $8 of the price they quoted me, and 3 drivers actually canceled on me. The first driver accepted the trip, and he was on the freeway, and then he canceled when he got off. So I don't know, maybe he didn't see how short my destination was, and so once he got off the freeway, he canceled. Another driver quickly accepted it and canceled. So maybe, same thing. He accepted it and was like, oh, screw this guy. He's going way too short. And then finally, a third guy accepted it, but he didn't move for like 5 minutes. So I actually called a Lyft and took a Lyft instead. And I totally don't blame these drivers at all. It was funny because I was thinking to myself, like, wow, hopefully these drivers are like rideshare guy readers, because if I'm sitting there, I would be doing the exact same thing. I would be declining like in the middle of the day when there's no bonuses or no incentives or anything. Like, why take a minimum fare ride where you're only going to make $2 or $3, right, after all the fees? So that was sort of funny. One Love says, what's going on, my friend? Uber and Lyft are not taking the underage passengers problem more serious. Do you have any suggestions on what they should, as rideshare company, do to correct this problem? I think, so we did a video on this. I think it's actually a pretty simple solution. So I'm going to share a video that we did. I think it was called How to Handle Underage Riders. And basically what we said in this video is, all that Uber and Lyft really need to do to solve this problem is just require riders to scan their IDs, right? So, I mean, that's not going to solve everything, but right now it's so easy to create an Uber or Lyft passenger account. You can, like kids have their own credit card. You can use your parents' credit card, right? And I think if they just required an ID, that would put like a small barrier. And what's interesting is to ride a scooter or bike on the Uber app, you have to put your ID in. So it's not like they already have the technology. I think that if they just, kind of required riders to do it, it would like put a big dent in the issue. I'm sure there would still be, kids are, little terrors, right? Like high school kids are out there very mischievous. So I'm sure they would find a way around it. But I think there is, some simple stuff like that they could do. Driver Rich says $3 rides. That's disgusting. There's got to be a minimum of $5, maybe more. Yeah, I definitely agree. Dennis says 2 years, 12,350 rides and counting without the Quest bonus. Short rides are not worth it. Definitely. I think we're all on the same page. The Quest bonus, short rides are not worth it without the Quest bonus. Sergio says there's a trick to the new Quest. Do the math, guys. I'm assuming that, I guess, if you get that low service fee, then you only want to take super long trips. I'm assuming that's the trick you're referring to, Sergio, but, let me know if I'm missing something. James says it's scary that one report from a passenger can get you deactivated, whether it's a true or false report. And I think that is one of the really scary things about driving for Uber and Lyft, especially if you're super reliant on this income. So, number one, you have to be signed up with both Uber and Lyft. So if you're not signed up with both Uber and Lyft, that's like a no-brainer, right? Like I can't even feel bad for you if you get deactivated and you're not signed up with other platform. I mean, I guess you can go and do it at that time, but it might take a few days, a week or two, and you might need money in the interim. But that would be the first thing that I do, just so, just in case. You never know what's going to happen. You have that backup plan there, because, that is, the nice thing is, like Rideshare Revolution in Chicago, he got deactivated by Uber, and now he's driving full time for Lyft. So it's not ideal, but you can definitely still make it work. So hopefully that answers your question. Creekside says, I went from $30 per 4 days, giving 40 rides on Quest, to making $4 for 40 rides. What's interesting about the new Quest, it's like hard to even know like how much extra you're making. So like it's hard to even compare before and after. That's the other issue that I've found. Jonathan says Sergio is right about the short trips, about the new Quest tricks, but you have to be savvy. I agree. And Driver Rich says, yep, the customers are being charged way too little. Okay. Let's see. Real rideshare stories, or actually kind of touching up on the minor issue. Jeff says, I've noticed a decline in unaccompanied minors in my market. Yeah, I haven't noticed anything particularly, but I haven't seen Uber and Lyft doing, and he's in Milwaukee, I haven't seen Uber and Lyft doing anything. To their credit, they have been adding a lot more safety features, right? There've been a bunch of, they've kind of been in the news for a lot of bad safety stories recently. So they have been adding a lot more safety features and things like that. So, we'll see what happens there. And so we'll take a quick, not pause here, but I just want to mention, if you guys are joining right now, thank you for joining. And if you haven't given this video, we got over 60 people watching live, and the numbers are going up. So feel free to give this video a thumbs up. We're only at 19 likes. So maybe some of you are driving, or maybe some of you haven't liked the video. It doesn't show me down votes. So I don't know, maybe some of you have downvoted, but always appreciate the thumbs up. It helps other drivers and other subscribers out there see these lives. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so that you know when I go live. I tend to go live every month on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific. And then also whenever there's big breaking news, I also like to go live. So you guys can stay tuned for that. And as we normally do, I think someone was asking, oh yeah, someone was asking about the new shirt. So we'll give away a couple of these shirts at the end of the podcast, or sorry, at the end of the YouTube live today. You know, we've got the new site design up there looking pretty good. And I think we have a page where you can buy shirts and stuff like this, but we haven't really launched it yet. But for now, I'll give away 2 of these shirts tonight. So remind me to do that at the end in case I forget. But, you know, I always like to do a little giveaway at the end of the YouTube lives to say thank you for joining. And I will say that, you know, so we get these made through Amazon and they're like really soft. These are like pretty nice t-shirts. They're not super expensive. I think they're like 20, 25 bucks or something like that, but they are very good quality. So that's kind of cool. But we will actually, let's see if I have the Amazon link right now. Might even be able to share it with you guys right now. I think this is the premium tee. Here it is. All right, cool. Well, I'll leave a link in the show notes. Alan says, just 2 shirts. Yeah, these shirts are expensive. How much are they? I think these shirts are 25 bucks or something like that. 20 bucks, not bad. So I like I guess we've got the heather gray. Oh, these are the light t-shirts. And we also have some darker t-shirts. So let me give you the link right here. Yeah, 20 bucks. I think 2 shirts is reasonable. You guys can take a look at that. Rick says, I don't ever get tips from Lyft. All right. Rideshare Lisa says, Harry, thank you for the shirt you sent me, but I can't keep it because it's too small. So I'm giving it to Uber girl Paula. I'm sorry about that. Hopefully we sent you the right size, but maybe the Amazons run small. So maybe that's a tip. Maybe you got to order 1 size up. Sean says, Uber tips better. I'd be curious to know what you guys think. Uber, which of your passengers tip better these days, Uber or Lyft? You know, I know in the early days, obviously, you know, before Uber had a tip option, it was kind of obvious that Lyft passengers tip better. But even, you know, I think in the few years after, the year or 2 after Uber added the tip option, still, you know, not many of the Uber passengers like to tip. I like that with Lyft from day one, there's always been that tip option. I've always personally found that Lyft passengers tip more frequently and better than Uber passengers, but I'm curious to know what you guys say. Mr. Vic says, I'm gonna use tonight's tip to go towards that shirt. Yeah, there you go. Just need a few more tips. And Jason says Lyft tips better. Gromito says Uber tips are better. So let's see. Dennis says, where's my shirt, dude? Size medium so I can look buff. Wow, I didn't realize these shirts were going to be such a big hit. So, well, if you guys want to buy a shirt, I left the link to the Amazon link. I don't even think we make any money off of that, but you guys can look cool and have a shirt. Let's see. Any questions coming in? Jason says, had many rides lately at a stop after accepting. Was much longer ride to drop additional rider. Very little money and at a stop should be considered as another trip toward quest bonus like pool. So basically what Jason is saying is that he's had many rides that, you know, he got there and got him into the car, saw the destination, and he's driving them, and then they at a stop, you know, so after he's already accepted the trip. And it was a much longer ride to drop off, you know, that second passenger or make whatever stop they needed. And I will say, you know, so Uber pays based off exact mileage and time now in California, and in other states, the price that they quote is also based off exact mileage and time. So if you do make a stop that's out of the way, Uber will adjust the fare automatically. And we've tested this a bunch of times. So you do get paid for like those extra stops and the mileage and time. What may be happening though, Jason, is that you're not getting paid, you know, much when you're waiting, right? So if you happen to wait for 5 or 10 minutes, that could be the issue. And in those cases, I'll usually tell the passengers, hey, you know, I don't get paid much for waiting, so would you mind calling another ride if you're going to be more than 2 or 3 minutes, right? And they kind of have to be a real dick to say no in that situation. And most of the time, you know, they're cool with it, or they say okay, or it just makes them hurry up and, you know, do whatever they're doing a lot quicker. So that's how I would handle that. And hopefully that answers your question. Who was it? Jason, Michael? Yeah, answered that. Let's see. Jackson says, how do we discourage Uber and Lyft from doing driverless cars? True or false? Riders don't want driverless cars. Well, I think what riders want is, frankly, probably the cheapest ride. And I think that's one thing we've seen over the years is like they really care about getting from point A to point B for as little money as possible. Like, why do people take Uber Pool? It's terrible. Drivers hate it. Passengers don't even like it. I don't think that, passengers hate it, but they take it because it's cheaper. It still gets them from point A to point B. It might even take them a little longer, right? But it's cheaper. And so that's why they take it. So I think if driverless cars are going to be cheaper, and they might be, at some point in the future, once they've ironed out all the technology kinks, then, I think there will be demand for it from passengers. I mean, I don't know if you can necessarily discourage Uber and Lyft from doing driverless cars. I think they're going to do whatever they have to do and kind of whatever they feel is best for them. But I think the kind of hype around driverless cars is way overblown. When these things do start hitting the streets, it's going to be in very limited areas, limited capacity. There's going to be a lot of issues with them. And I think that if anything, there might be kind of a hybrid mix of driverless cars and humans in the future. So who knows? Maybe Uber will give all those short trips to the driverless cars, and the humans can take the longer trips. That'd be okay with me. But I don't think it's going to be a huge issue. Elijah says, why aren't you guys talking about the base fare? That is what actually matters. So, frankly, Elijah, most cities don't have base fares. I know some cities do, and it's great if you do. But I do think you're onto something there. There should be a nice little fee to sort of get those trips started. And that's kind of the issue we were talking about in California on those short trips now, where you might only net 275 or 284 or whatever the payout is on a minimum fare in California. It doesn't make sense to do those trips at all. Like, I would literally never do those trips anymore. So drivers are obviously still doing them, but if there was some type of base fare, then drivers or passengers would have to pay a little bit more, but they might actually get those rides. And it may not be lucrative in those cases to do the short trips, but you at least make something, and you might not lose money, right? So that's one thing. Let's see. Ken says, when the actual surge at airport, it says 2x and the driver sets his rate at 1x and gets a rider. Does the rider pay 2x? And if so, who gets the difference between 2x and 1x? So that's a good question, Ken. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm like 90% sure that if if the passenger sets their fare, or sorry, if the driver sets their fare lower and the rider, kind of gets matched with you, they're going to pay basically. There isn't, Uber isn't going to be able to keep that difference. They're going to kind of like pay whatever the driver gets, right? Because what's happening now in California, sorry, that was a terrible explanation. Let me try that again. So what's happening now in California is whatever riders pay, that's what drivers are getting, minus Uber's booking fee and minus the 25% service fee. So if you lower your rates to 1x, and it's a 2x surge, then that passenger is going to pay 1x and Uber is going to get their 25% service fee. So, Uber is also making less money, because there's service fee on a lower amount of surge on these trips. But, I think it's much worse for the driver in that situation. So hopefully that answers your question there. Steven says, when you have somebody in your back seat, you should be making money, except with Uber or Lyft. I think you want to keep your wheels moving, right? That's what I always tell people. Since the mileage rate is typically 3 to 4 times higher than the per minute rate, it's obviously going to pay to go 70 miles per hour versus sit there. You can go 70. If you're going 60 miles per hour, you can go 1 mile in a minute, right? Versus just sitting there for 1 minute, not driving, and getting paid 1/3 or 1/4 as much. So Gary says, we don't need the Hyundai Uber helicopter in the sky anytime soon. Yeah, I know Uber is working on a lot of these. Uber is working on a lot of crap out there, but a lot of times this stuff is super far from reality. Driverless cars, electric vertical takeoff and landing, helicopters, basically. Like, I think a lot of those technologies are more for investors to sort of say, like, hey, look at all this cool fancy stuff we're working on, that maybe distracts people from the fact that they're losing, billions of dollars, right? Martin says, if two driverless cars get in an accident, whose insurance pays? That's a good question. I don't know. They're going to have to figure that one out. But you know what's interesting? If you guys are interested in driverless cars, I did do a very good interview with a guy from Ars Technica. What was his name? Let me pull it up right now. I believe his name, Tim Lee. So we did a podcast early last year in March, kind of, he's an expert in technology. He's a reporter for Ars Technica, which is kind of a tech focused outlet, and he talked about kind of like the true state of self-driving car technology. So if you guys are interested in that, I will leave a link to that podcast. You can go check it out. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, we're actually starting to release all of our podcasts, which are typically, you find in iTunes and the podcast app, and is audio only. We're now releasing them on the YouTube channel. So I'm trying to get all of the guests that I interview on the podcast to also record video. Not every one of them has video or wants to do video. So you'll always see my face on the video for the podcast. We're going to be releasing those on Fridays. So we did one that was sort of a nice controversial topic to start about with David Zipper, who's a big, very knowledgeable guy in the mobility space, about kind of the potential discriminatory issues, right? If drivers can see where riders are going, like what discriminatory issues could arise. So I'll leave a link to that podcast too. We did it. We posted it on the YouTube channel, and we're going to be posting those every single Friday. So you guys can take a look at that if you're interested. Michael says, at a stop only counts as one ride. Pool counts for each rider toward Quest. Not fair. That's a good recommendation, Michael. I think that if they did, if riders do make a stop, it should count extra, or there should be like with Uber Pool, I think in some cities, there's like a dollar, extra pickup fee, right? Because it's usually, not a huge hassle, but I think what's interesting is a lot of what was wrong with Uber in the early days. We're sort of seeing some slow changes over time that really it's sort of just like anytime a driver has to do more work or more effort, I feel that they should be paid for it or rewarded for it. And, when rates were higher back in the day, drivers would just kind of go out of their way to do it. But now when the rates are a lot lower, Uber is kind of seeing that, oh man, if we want a driver to return someone's lost phone, we got to pay them. Drivers aren't and probably shouldn't be doing this out of the kindness of their heart. So that's what I would recommend there. Rob says, what are the chances that all of these Uber driver changes in California go national? So I actually touched on this earlier, Rob. I think there's a good chance. It looks like a lot of these changes are working well for Uber. They haven't, reneged on any of them, which is a good sign for drivers. And, in some respects, I guess, for some of the changes, like seeing destination. And I don't think Uber wants like a patchwork system of, kind of like surge and, what drivers can or can't see. So I wouldn't be surprised if it works in California, they'll probably roll it out everywhere. So that's what I think there. And Jonathan says, passengers are misusing the at a stop to try and go to the grocery store or drive through, and that's not what it's for. So yeah, Jonathan, I agree. And that's, I talked earlier how I handle that situation, just very simply saying like, hey, I don't get paid much to stop and wait. So if you're going to be more than 2 to 3 minutes, I would just ask that you end the trip and call for another ride. So that way I can go, get another passenger. So that's how I would handle that. Mike says at a stop amounts to an extra dollar like pool, but it doesn't count toward Quest. Good point. Although, I guess in places like, I guess, Michael, I'm assuming you're driving outside of California, right? Because now the Quest bonus doesn't matter as well. I guess it still matters, but you just get that reduced service fee instead of a bonus, right? In the past, when it was a per trip bonus, you want to do as many short trips and as many pool trips as you wanted so that you could get that bonus quicker. And now you're just getting kind of a reduced service fee. So, I think if anything, you might want longer trips, once you get to that reduced service fee level. So, as you guys have seen, like one thing that we try to teach, Sergio, I don't know if he's still watching, but he does a great job in a lot of his articles. Maybe we should get him over on the YouTube channel, is really teaching teaching the principles that matter over time. Uber and Lyft are always changing the system. They're going from, multiplier surge to flat rate surge to multiplier surge and back, right? But the principles that you learn, like kind of understanding the flows of your city and when it's going to be surging, right? Whether it's flat rate surge or multiplier surge, you have to really understand the flows of your city and know when on a Monday through Friday morning, like where does it surge and at what time. And these patterns are pretty easy to recognize, but you'd be surprised. A lot of drivers just go out there and don't think too much, just accept every request they get. And, as Sergio would say, they're not patient, right? So being patient is definitely important. As you guys know, I always like to say, work smarter, not harder. So, all right, we've talked a lot about adding a stop. You guys, definitely a lot of issues with adding a stop. So hopefully Uber and Lyft will fix this. And I mean, frankly, if it's a big enough issue, I think that they may in the future. Michael says, or Jonathan says, I simply say, I can totally drop you off there, but I can't stop. And he does it with a smile. So H. Malesio says, Lyft shared rides been getting passengers who request one seat, but show up with two. Lyft app makes me skip the pickups. So do I get paid for time and distance picking up skipped fare? So I think your question is, I'm not sure if you're canceling on them. I mean, I think that's what you could potentially do, though, right? If you see that, I guess if it's your first passenger, right? Excuse me, if you see that they're coming in with more people than they say. And I think passengers might do this because I think it might save them like a buck or two when they're requesting a ride. Again, like anything to save a buck, but feel free to H. Malesios. Oh, you're saying the Lyft app makes me cancel. Right. Because if they have more than what they say, I mean, you should still get paid for time and distance for picking up that skipped fare. I would have to double check. I would imagine that they do, or what you probably want to go for in that situation is a cancellation fee, right? So there's a lot of times where, I have found that like in this situation, I don't know if the Lyft app is going to recognize that you should get that cancellation fee. When you go to pick up an underage minor, when you go to pick up a passenger and discover that they're an underage minor, like some drivers have told me, I know for a while Uber had the option to report underage minor. I think they might have taken it away recently. I haven't checked lately. And some drivers were telling me sometimes they would get paid for it, sometimes they didn't. But one sort of surefire way that I've always found to ensure you get a cancellation fee, whether it's like underage minor, they weren't there, just follow the like strict protocol, right? Like on Uber, if it's you have to wait 2 minutes, you have to go after, like on Uber Pool, it's different. But if you have to wait 5 minutes and then cancel, then you're sort of like, doubling up, right? So if you wait the 5 minutes and then you cancel the trip, that like automatically triggers a cancellation fee in Uber's system versus some of these other kind of smaller issues like underage minor, or I don't know, the passenger, was trying to bring a beer into the car and I had to cancel the ride because of that. I don't think that's a reason you can cancel, or you can cancel for that reason, but it's not an option in the app. But that's kind of one way, is to sort of that system is always kind of fail proof. So that's how I would try and handle that there. Gary says, do passengers give you lower ratings when they see you are using a dash cam? I've never had any issues with that, Gary. And if, once in a while, some passenger will say something and I say, oh, it's just for, my security. And, in case, another driver tries to hit me, there are a lot of crazy drivers in LA, right? So that's how you can kind of handle that. Ken says, Lyft app has you request the rider to change the passenger count from 1 to 2. If more than 2, you have to cancel. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. Anything else? We'll probably wrap up here in a second, do the giveaway of 2 t-shirts. And let's see if there's any other questions. Jonathan says dash cam is a necessity. I know you guys know I use the Vantrue N2 Pro. So I think this is a good place to go ahead and wrap it up. We talked about a lot of different topics today. I think we hit dash cams, Uber's new changes, minors, adding a stop, lots of good stuff. So if you guys want to enter the giveaway, all you need to do is send me an email, harry@therideshareguy.com, subject line YouTube Live, and let me know what's one reason why you think drivers should have a dash cam, right? We talked a lot about dash cams tonight, so I think that's a good topic. And as I mentioned, I'll be giving away 2 t-shirts. So if you want to enter to win a shirt, just shoot me an email, harry@therideshareguy.com, subject line YouTube Live, and let me know what's one good reason, or what's your favorite reason why a driver should have a dash cam. It could be something that happened to you, or just general advice for drivers. And if you don't have a dash cam yet, go out and get one, because it's like a really cheap insurance policy. So I'm going to go ahead and chat this into the window right now. How to email me: harry@therideshareguy.com, subject line YouTube live. And what did I say? What's one reason why drivers should have a dash cam? Send me an email. Send me an email to enter the contest. Jackson says, thank you for responding. It's hard for me to believe the total cost of driverless cars is less than humans. I agree. There's already been a lot of, probably tens, if not hundreds of billions invested. They probably could have just paid all that money to drivers. So, and Jonathan wants to know, Sergio's service fee discount. So, hopefully you guys all got some value out of this. And if you haven't given this live stream a thumbs up, I would definitely appreciate that right now. H. Malesio says, R.I.P. Kobe. And yes, this news was very, I'm here in LA and grew up with Kobe. So super tragic news on Sunday. Very sad. But appreciate you saying that. And hopefully you guys will all have a good day. And I look forward to seeing you again next month. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you haven't done so already. Shoot me an email if you want to enter to win one of 2 t-shirts that I'll be giving away. And I'll see you guys next month. All right. Take care. Maybe sooner.